All right. So this is going to be a quick lesson, right? We're going to get right into it. It's just about FHRP. We're just describing the concept as far as Cisco is concerned. Let's actually go into it really quick. Let me just so we can double check and see exactly what they want. And I think you guys should always do that, right? Always go back and say, okay, what's the exam topics? What's the exam topics? What's going on? Now, let me pull this up. Let's see. We have OSPF. There we go. 3.5, describe the purpose of first hop redundancy protocol. So we're just describing, we're not configuring or verifying nothing. We're describing the purpose as far as CCNA is concerned, right? So let's go back into our Notion. Let's clear out of here. Let's go back to our computer networking. And this is actually the end of week 3, right? So we're going to do the first hop redundancy protocol. We're just going to describe, talk about it. And then for the next 3 days is really just studying, making sure you've completed all of the labs from previous. I even have a first hot redundancy protocol lab that you can do as well if you've done all the labs or you want a more deep understanding. So it's definitely a holiday weekend, so use these 3 days to just go ahead and study, right? Labs, all the things that you just learned how to do, go ahead and put that on your resume, right? These certain types of technology like Linux, we did mess with that. Go ahead and put that on your resume. Put these things that that you've learned there, so you can at least keep track of what's happening with your own knowledge. And then day 21 is a brain dump. That's really just you just dumping your brain on the things that you don't know. I do have some PDFs, but I probably won't give that to you guys now. But if you're interested, just definitely email support@technicallyspeaking.com or reach us out on Discord, right? And let me know that you want to look at a brain dump PDF. Basically, it's just like a bunch of quiz. How can I say this? Like a bunch of questions that they came up with that's kind of like different versions of the CCNA. And, you basically quote unquote memorize these types of questions so you know what to expect on the exam, and what the format of the question is, and you can kind of cater your study in that way, in a more memorizing way. This is very popular in other countries like India and them. They use brain dumps a lot to help them pass the exams. But so if you want to, I may add that. I don't know. We'll see what happens over the weekend. But if I don't have it here and you're interested, just reach out in Discord. I don't mind sharing PDFs with you guys. But let's get into first hot redundancy protocol, right? So let's come in here and let's talk about this really quick. First hot redundancy protocol. Now, we're just describing it. So like I said, I do have a lab, but just really make sure you can know how to explain FHRP. So if someone says, hey, what's FHRP or what's first hop redundancy protocol, you can give them a good high level overview of what it is. Okay. So the term FHRP is really a family of protocols. It's not really like one protocol. So when you say first hop redundancy protocol, you're really naming a group of protocols, not necessarily just, it's just one protocol, right? And they're all under this umbrella because it essentially does the same thing. And that means that it allows this default gateway for redundancy. And we know that redundancy is just, having more than one way to get to somewhere. So they have a default gateway that's more than one way to a default gateway, to a way that you can get outside your network and talk to the internet, and the internet can talk to you, out your network, in your network. And basically, again, it's just having more than one default gateway available for redundancy. So if one router fails, the other one is there for backup. And as you can see here, let me just scroll down a little bit. As you can see here, we have, and it's a little blurry, sorry about that. That's just how it's saved after a PDF because I tried to print it. But anyway, so we have one router that's active, another router that's on standby. They both share a default gateway, which you don't see here, but it's a little blurry, which is an IP address, a virtual gateway, to where no matter if my active router goes down, I still have a way to another router to still get out into the WAN, into the internet, right? BGP, the internet's protocol, right? So that's really all, that's really on the high level, right? First hot redundancy protocol, right? It's a way to use a default gateway as redundancy, right? And you're just having one router as active and the other router as standby, okay? Now, again, we know what a default gateway is, okay? It's just an IP address that is on the router. So it can help us communicate outside of our network. So anytime you see default gateway, that is the gateway. That is, you know, an IP address on the router that allows us to leave our network and talk to others. Okay. So going down to options, right? We have three types of options of first hop redundancy protocol options. Because remember, I said it's a family. It's not just one protocol, it's a family. So we have these options: HSRP, which is widely used, hot standby router protocol. Well, we use that a lot. It is Cisco proprietary. It uses an active and standby approach, right? So it's like, hey, once active, one's just listening until it's time to get up on its thing. Then we have VRRP, Virtual Router Redundancy Protocol, which is open standard with this RFC 5798, and it has the same redundancy approach, as in one's active and the other one is on standby, in case, you know, the active goes down. Then, of course, we have down here the GLBP, the Gateway Load Balancing Protocol. It is also a Cisco proprietary, but it uses an approach of active. So that means that they're both active and they load balance. They balance the load. So one router may take, you know, 50% of the data, and the other router will take 50% of the data. Okay, like I said, they're going to load balance, right? We're using all these protocols, these first hop routing protocols, again, just it's for redundancy, to improve the uptime. Because, like, think of something like AT&T, right? I myself have AT&T for phone and for internet. So if any of that go down at any point in time throughout the day, you know, I could be, you know, facing a lot of consequences. Maybe I'm coding something and, you know, my internet just went to trash. Now I cannot save it. Or I should have had like save offline or work offline. Or, you know, what if I'm doing work, I'm on a call and the AT&T service just went out? You know, that was an important call, and I would have to either call the person back or they'll have to call me back. But, you know, I'm using AT&T and the network down. So every second matters, right? So we always want to find a way to ensure that our network is up 100% of the time. Right. Well, we're not going to say 100% because there are times where we have to restart routers and stuff, but there's still a way to, still redundancy, it's still a way to move the traffic here, you know, and if it is down, it's down for like, you know, 5-10 minutes, nothing crazy. But we still have a emergency. We still have a backup. And again, this is what all this is for, right? This is why we use first hop redundancy protocol, right? First hop redundancy, first hop router protocol, because of redundancy, right? Anything could happen. The power switch can go down. You know, maybe it's something with the weather, right? And it made the power go down or made the routers go down. It's just something, man, something just gonna happen to where routers is just gonna stop working, from power issues to network issues to whatever. And we wanna always have a backup. It's all about backup. As a network engineer, especially as a network architect, it's all about backup. You know, you're finding a way to ensure that there's a backup. There's a backup to the backup, right? So yeah, these are the options, the different protocols under first hop redundancy, first hop routing protocols. So you can see the differences. They will ask you about the differences on the exam. So I suggest you really understand these differences. HSRP, like I said, is Cisco proprietary, and it is the first FHRP created. And it's one that, you know, you're most likely always going to see if you're digging deep into networking equipment out there in the enterprise setting. Okay. Now, talking more about HSRP, because, you know, that's more we're going to use. The other two, we usually don't use that. VRRP, obviously you'll use it if there's no Cisco devices in your network, if you're not working on a Cisco device. And then of course the GLBP, if you want to load balance, then you would use that. Okay, so most likely you're either going to use HSRP or VRRP. This is a Cisco exam, so we're going to talk about HSRP. Oh, this is much clearer. Oh, that's how I should have put it, you know. Okay, excuse me. So how does this HSRP work, right? So we have multiple routers. You see router 1, router 2, you have like an edge router, which means it's on the edge of our network. It's going to speak to the outside, the outside internet. So we have our different routers or multiple routers, router 1, 2, and the edge, and they all work together. And they all work together under this one virtual IP address. As you can see, the virtual IP 10.2.2.1/24. And that is going to be the default gateway that they use for redundancy. They're also going to share like a virtual MAC address. So they're going to share the virtual IP, the virtual MAC address, and I don't think anything else. Let me look over here. Nope. So we have our standby, priority, track, and router IP. Again, the router IP, we already know it's the router's IP address. We have this virtual IP, which is the default gateway that these routers will use. And then we have our priority. I believe the highest priority is selected. Let me take a look at, where's our notion? Let's go to our read. Oh, it was right here. Yes. So let's take a look at some notes here, because I don't remember off the top of my head. So the way that HSRP works is, yes, they do share a virtual MAC address and a virtual IP address. So yes, and the virtual IP address is used by those routers. Now, the standby router will assume control of the virtual MAC address and the virtual IP address when the active router fails. So if you see here, which one is active? They both have standby as 1. I believe the priority is high. Let me take a look because we want to know which one is standby. Properties, which is the active. Default priority is 100. The active on 1 has the highest priority. No, exactly. So highest priority is the active. So this will assume the virtual IP address and the virtual MAC address and say, hey, all the traffic come to me. But in case it fails, then this will come in play. And this is the standby, and it will assume this, it will start using the virtual IP, and it will take that virtual MAC address and saying, hey, traffic come over here so I can take you to the edge and you can get out the network. Right? That's essentially how HSRP works in its specific way, right? We have our active router that has a virtual IP and a virtual MAC address. And then if it goes down, our standby router, which is the one that assumes position. How do we know the active one has the highest priority? The default priority is 100, so you can keep it at default or you can change it. But just know that the highest one will win. If they're both 100, like I said, if tied, then the high IP address win. So which one will win? It will be this one. If they both was priority at 100, or if they both had a priority at 200, or the priority was the same for both of them, this router 2 will actually be the active router because it has the highest router IP address. Okay, that's usually how that works anyway. The highest IP wins. Looking more in priority. So as you can see with we have priority here. Assigning a priority allows you to select the active and standby routers. It is a required configuration setting. Excuse me. The range is 12255 and the default is 100. So you can, change the default to the priority to anything, right? Because obviously you're architecting the network. So you're saying, hey, this one is the active, this one is the standby. Preemption is an optional configuration. If the excuse me, if it is enabled, the router with the highest priority becomes the active router. If priorities are equal, the current active router does not change. The priority of the device can change dynamically if an interface is configured by standby track command and other interface router goes down. Basically, if the active router is down, you fix it, it will go back to being active, right? So basically, that whole paragraph just said this one last sentence sums it up. If the active router is down, and once you fix the active router, let's say the active router, somebody came by and unplugged the power cable, they tripped over it and the power cable was unplugged. So now when they figure out that it was a layer 1 issue, they go ahead and plug that power cable back in with the router, and the router gets back online, the interfaces come back active. Now that active router will say, hey, stand by, you don't have to be active anymore, I'm back at it, come to me. Okay, that's basically what that command is saying, what that configuration setting is saying. Let me go back to here. As far as, oh, here we go, priority. So yeah, I did have it all here. As far as the configuration, the preempt, here what is kind of what it looks like, right? So you would go into how you would configure it. You would go into your interface. Obviously, you add an IP address. You're gonna add the standby, which is the group. That's how you start off with your HSRP commands. Is standby, and you put your group number, which will be 1, and then you put the IP address that you guys will be sharing, and then you'll put same command standby 1, which is HSRP command, and you'll say the priority, what the priority is. It's already defaulted as 1. So if you're doing this command, that means that you are changing it to something else because you want it to be 1 active and 1 standby. And then you would go ahead and put preempt under that, which again is saying that, hey, I may go down, but if I go down, make me back active again. Don't put me on standby mode while you still handle it. You only handle it until I get back up. That's basically what it's saying. And then of course, track serial, which is you tracking it. Okay. So going back, I kind of like the blog a little better. So let me go back to the blog. So that's basically preempt that configuration. There is a HSRP version 1 and version 2. I don't think you have to really go in on version 1 and version 2. They're probably really not going to ask you too much. They're just going to ask you to describe what HSRP does and what is first hop redundancy. Why do I keep saying redundancy? First hop routing protocol is. But as you can see, they have different group numbers. They even have a different MAC address, so you can tell. And this is when you're configuring it. That's kind of how I don't want to go in here. But just to go over a little bit, it's just different versions. Obviously, version 1 came out with version 2. Version 2 just gives it more. It enables more MAC addresses, more virtual MAC addresses. Well, at least you can use a virtual MAC address. I believe it's faster, and obviously right here has different multicast address when you're sending hello packets. Remember, the hello packets is to make sure that all routers understand what's happening with protocols that we have going on. Let me see, has a different packet. It's different packets, are different things with version 1 and version 2. Will they ask you? Maybe, maybe not. That's why I put it in here so you can at least get a high level overview of it. Let me see what else they want. What else we talk about? Terms to know. Select the active and standby router. Okay, so we already know priority. We know preempt. It is an optional. You don't have to configure preempt. it is optional, right? And you put it there if the active router is down and you fix that active router and you want it to go back to being active, not just on standby. And then of course, the difference between these two. Oh, the virtual MAC address, yes, it gives you higher count, and obviously higher count with group numbers as well, and a different multicast address. So I think these are really the three you should know the difference between V1 and V2 as far as exam purposes, okay? And that's it, right? HSRP is really like something you're always going to see. But let's say that you are not working on Cisco equipment by chance. You know that there's different variations and it's all under first hop redundancy protocols, right? It's all about redundancy. We care about redundancy. We want to always have another path, an alternative path in case one fails, okay? That is like number one. Oh, no, keep this right here. That's like number one as an engineer, right? It's all about backup. And I'm going to put this here because I think that I don't have first hop redundancy. Put that right here. So you can have both. And then let's see, we have lab, and I believe I put, yep, I added some stuff extra in here. But an HSRP lab, in case you need to actually see it in motion, see it do the commands. Here's a lab that will really help you. One, it helps you with just literally doing the same thing over and over again with our VTY lines and enabling passwords and setting up host names and no shut on interfaces. Like these are things that's just right at this point should kind of be muscle memory. We've done these a couple times, a few times, several times in our labs since we started. And at least no shut, adding IP addresses, adding host names, configuring passwords, that should kind of be like second nature to you at this point. So even on this lab, they have you configure EIGRP, which is not on the exam, but it's still good to say, hey, I have done a lab that configured EIGRP, right? Nice questionnaire to get your wheels turning. But as you can see here, we're configuring HSRP, okay? And and what I like about these labs is it actually gives you step by step, and it asks you, were you able to ping? Were you able to do this? Why weren't you able to do this? And most of these labs have the answers in them, so they give you the answers too. But yes, I think that this is great. You guys definitely do that. Not too much of a live here, more of a pre-record. So I know we don't have any questions in the crowd, but definitely I want you guys to ensure that you can describe first hop routing protocol, okay? And when someone says, what is HSRP? You already know what's going on. So here's a FHRP lab, but I mean, not lab. Flashcards are also added NAT to that. We will be talking about NAT next, but at least you can have, because FHRP wasn't that long, so I added it with NAT. But at least you can, get what's going on with the first hop routing protocol, and you can know what's going on with our NAT. So you see, these are things you need to know. Well, network translation, we'll get there. But until then, thanks for showing up for another class. And we will talk about network address translation next, which is in week 4, IP addresses. So let me just make sure I close this out with the week 3 with you guys. Yes. OSPF, so we already know open shortest path first. All right, it is a dynamic routing protocol. You should already know how to configure it. And then of course, first hop routing protocol, we're just describing it. You should already know what it's all about. And why not knock it out with knowing how to configure it. For the next 3 days, it's just study, study, study. Okay. Do all the labs that you haven't done or you haven't been able to complete. And again, if you have, excuse me, you have any issues, you have, any questions, reach out. I'm here for you. So yes, yes.